There's a strange kind of pain that comes from being treated like you were forgettable, while feeling, deep down, that you weren't. And if you've ever watched a woman act distant, indifferent, or even cold after a connection that felt real to you, I want you to stay with me, because what you're about to understand isn't obvious, and it changes how you see the past. Before we go any further, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, not because I'm asking for a favor, but because what we'll uncover today builds slowly, and the most important insight comes later, when everything finally clicks into place. Now let me speak to you calmly, honestly, and without drama. When a woman acts like you meant nothing, most men assume one of two things. Either they weren't good enough, or she never cared at all. Both conclusions feel logical. Both are usually wrong. Human attachment doesn't work the way pride presents it, especially not for women who are emotionally complex, self-protective, or internally conflicted. Here's the first truth most men were never taught. Letting go is not the same as disconnecting. A woman can walk away behaviorally while remaining deeply attached psychologically. And in many cases, the colder she appears, the more active the internal struggle actually is. Indifference, when it's real, is quiet. It doesn't need to perform. But when someone goes out of their way to seem unaffected, to appear untouched, that's often a form of emotional control, not emotional absence. For many women, emotional bonds don't dissolve cleanly. They fragment. Parts of her move on. Other parts stay suspended in time. And the part that stays is usually the one connected to how she felt around you, not who you were on paper. Men are often taught to measure importance through outcomes. Did she stay? Did she come back? Did she say the words? But women often measure importance through emotional impact. How safe did she feel? How seen? How regulated? How alive? If you provided something rare, calm, consistency, emotional presence, or genuine respect, your imprint doesn't disappear just because the relationship ended. It becomes something she has to integrate or suppress. And suppression can look like dismissal. When she acts like you meant nothing, that behavior often isn't about erasing you. It's about protecting herself from the feelings that still surface when she doesn't. This is where men misinterpret silence as closure. Silence is not always peace. Sometimes it's containment. And what she's containing, whether she admits it or not, is not you as a person, but the version of herself she was when she was with you. That distinction matters more than you realize. Because near the end of this conversation, you'll understand why that version of her is the real reason she can't fully let you go, even if she never reaches out again. One of the most misunderstood dynamics between men and women is this. Women don't attach to moments the way men do. They attach to emotional states. And once an emotional state is associated with a person, it becomes very difficult to separate the two. This is where your confusion likely comes from. You remember conversations, shared experiences, maybe even the way things ended. She remembers how she felt in your presence. And those feelings don't obey logic, pride, or timelines. A woman can tell herself she's done with you while still carrying a quiet emotional reference point inside her. Not because she's weak or confused, but because emotional memory doesn't vanish just because a decision was made. For many women, especially emotionally intelligent or emotionally guarded ones, letting go isn't about forgetting. It's about learning how to live without revisiting. That's why she may avoid places, topics, or even music connected to you. That's why she may seem overly controlled in how she speaks about you, or avoids speaking about you altogether. These are not signs of indifference. They're signs of emotional regulation. Here's something important most men never hear. Emotional detachment often looks like emotional discipline. When a woman felt deeply but believes the connection wasn't sustainable or safe, she doesn't grieve the way men expect. She doesn't always cry openly or express longing. Instead, she reorganizes her inner world. She creates distance not because the feelings disappeared, but because they didn't. And that process can look ruthless from the outside. If she acts like you meant nothing, ask yourself this quietly. Did she truly act neutral, or did she act controlled? Neutrality is soft. Control is rigid. Women who genuinely feel nothing don't need to prove it. They don't overcorrect. They don't rewrite history. They don't minimize what was shared. They simply move on. But when a woman minimizes your importance, reframes the connection, or behaves as if it was insignificant, that's often an attempt to regain emotional authority over something that once affected her deeply. This is not manipulation, it's self-protection, especially for women who were taught, implicitly or explicitly, that needing someone is dangerous. So when she says or shows that you meant nothing, what she's often communicating internally is this: I cannot afford to feel what I felt again. And here's where it gets personal. If you were the man who listened without trying to fix her, who stayed grounded when she was overwhelmed, who didn't demand emotional performance from her, then you became a reference point for emotional safety. Emotional safety is not easily replaced. It doesn't fade with time. It becomes a comparison point. She may meet other men, she may appear happy, but the nervous system remembers what regulation felt like. And once it has that memory, it doesn't forget. This is why letting go of you isn't about distance. It's about rewriting an internal experience. To understand why she can't fully let you go, even when she acts like you meant nothing, you have to understand something deeper than attachment. You have to understand identity. For many women, especially those who are introspective or emotionally layered, relationships don't just connect them to another person, they temporarily connect them to a different version of themselves. And sometimes that version is difficult to face once the relationship ends. With you, she may have been softer, or more expressive, or more hopeful, or more emotionally available than she's comfortable being now. And when that version of herself no longer fits her current reality, the easiest way to manage the discomfort is to dismiss the context in which it existed, which means dismissing you. This isn't about disrespect, it's about psychological coherence. When a woman says, directly or indirectly, "It didn't mean that much," what she's often trying to do is reconcile who she was then with who she needs to be now. Because acknowledging that you mattered would also mean acknowledging that she changed around you, that she opened something, that she risked something, and risk, once it ends without resolution, is painful to revisit. Men are often encouraged to seek clarity. Women are often encouraged to seek emotional stability. And sometimes, emotional stability comes from minimizing what once disrupted it. That's why she might rewrite the story of the relationship, not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. If she told herself, "That was real, that mattered, I felt seen," she would also have to sit with the loss of that version of herself. And for many women, that grief feels more destabilizing than pretending the connection was shallow. Here's a truth that may sting, but it's important. The deeper you reached her emotionally, the more likely she is to distance herself cognitively afterward. Because deep emotional experiences demand integration, and not everyone is ready or willing to integrate them. So instead, they compartmentalize. They place you in a mental box labeled past, and they keep the lid tightly closed. Not because there's nothing inside, but because opening it would disrupt the life they're trying to build now. This is why she may appear unaffected while you feel the weight of what was shared. You're processing the connection. She's managing it. And there's a crucial difference between processing and managing. Processing leads to understanding. Managing leads to control. If you mattered to her in a way that challenged her sense of self, letting you go isn't just about missing you. It's about resisting the pull back into a version of herself she's not sure she can afford to become again. And that's why, even in silence, even in distance, you remain psychologically present. Not as a person she's pining for, but as a chapter she hasn't fully integrated. One of the quietest misconceptions men carry is this belief: if she doesn't reach out, she doesn't think about you. And psychologically, that simply isn't true. Thought and action are not the same thing, especially for women who are emotionally self-aware or emotionally restrained. When a woman has not fully integrated a past emotional bond, it doesn't announce itself through dramatic gestures. It shows up in patterns, in comparisons she doesn't consciously make, in reactions that feel disproportionate, in moments of hesitation she can't quite explain. You don't show up as a memory she revisits. You show up as a reference point. That's why she might feel irritated with someone new for reasons she can't articulate, or why a certain tone of voice, a type of presence, or a specific kind of calm unsettles her. The nervous system remembers before the mind does. This is what men often misread as mixed signals or emotional confusion. But from her perspective, it's neither. It's residue. Emotional residue doesn't mean longing. It means something was left incomplete. And when something is incomplete, the mind works quietly to protect itself from reopening it. That's why she may keep emotional walls higher now than she did with you. Why she may appear more guarded, more practical, more distant in future connections. Not because she learned you didn't matter, but because she learned how deeply she can feel. Here's an important reframe. If you truly meant nothing, there would be nothing to protect against. Women don't become more defended because of insignificant experiences. They become more defended because something reached them. And here's where I want you to be careful. This understanding is not an invitation to wait, hope, or hold on to an outcome. It's an invitation to release the self-blame that comes from being dismissed. Because her inability to fully let go is not a reflection of your worth, and it's not a promise of return. It's a reflection of how the connection altered her internal landscape. Men often want reassurance in the form of reunion. Women often process reassurance in the form of emotional containment. So she contains. She tells herself it didn't matter. She behaves as if it's irrelevant. She keeps her life moving forward. And yet, certain standards were set in her body that didn't exist before you. This is why some women don't reach out, not because they feel nothing, but because reaching out would mean acknowledging something they've worked hard to place behind emotional glass. Silence, in this context, is not dismissal, it's discipline. And understanding that distinction is what allows you to stop personalizing her behavior as a verdict on your value. Because what lingers is not attachment to you, it's attachment to the emotional clarity you represented. There's a moment, usually quiet and unspoken, when a man begins to realize that the question, "Why can't she let me go?" is no longer the right one. The more powerful question is, what does it say about me that she couldn't fully integrate the connection? Because this is where your growth actually begins. When a woman minimizes what you meant, the instinct is to shrink yourself, to question your impact, your attractiveness, your emotional value. But psychologically, the opposite is often closer to the truth. You didn't disappear because you were forgettable. You became quiet because you were significant. Men who are easy to replace are rarely minimized. They're simply replaced. Minimization happens when acknowledging significance would force emotional reckoning. And here's where many men unintentionally hold themselves back, by turning her unresolved processing into their unfinished business. Her inability to fully let go does not require you to stay emotionally available, frozen in time, or attached to a future that hasn't asked for you. In fact, the most grounded response to being minimized is not protest, it's embodiment. Embodiment means continuing to live as the man who created that emotional impact, without needing validation from the person who experienced it. This is where emotional maturity separates itself from emotional longing. You don't need her recognition to validate what was real. What was real was the way you showed up, calm, present, emotionally attuned. That doesn't vanish because someone couldn't face it afterward. And this is important. When you move forward without bitterness, without resentment, and without trying to prove your value, something subtle but powerful happens. You integrate the experience. You do what she couldn't. And integration creates closure that no conversation ever could. This is why men who grow after a meaningful connection often notice a shift, not in her behavior, but in their own sense of self. They stop wondering if they mattered. They start trusting that impact doesn't always come with acknowledgement. The truth is, some people can only process depth by distancing from it. Others can carry it forward and build on it. Your task is not to wait for her to catch up emotionally. It's to honor what the experience revealed about your capacity for connection, and to continue refining it, because the men who leave the deepest impressions are rarely the ones who chase understanding. They're the ones who understand themselves. And when you reach that place, her inability to let go becomes irrelevant, not because it wasn't real, but because it no longer defines you. Here is the truth I asked you to stay for, the one that reframes everything you've been carrying. A woman doesn't struggle to let go of a man because she wants him back. She struggles because something about who she became with him felt honest. And honesty, once experienced, is hard to dismiss without consequence. What lingers is not desire, it's recognition. You represented a mirror in which she saw herself more clearly, perhaps calmer, more open, more emotionally aligned than she's used to being. And when life pulls her away from that version of herself, the mind looks for distance from the mirror, not because it lies, but because it tells the truth. This is why she can act like you meant nothing while still being quietly shaped by the experience. And this is where I want you to release something heavy. You don't need to be remembered loudly to have mattered deeply. Some of the most formative connections in a person's life are never revisited, never named, never reclaimed. They live quietly inside the nervous system as a standard, a comparison, a reference for what felt real. That is not a loss, that is impact. But impact is not ownership. You are not meant to carry her unresolved emotions, just as she is not meant to carry yours. The connection did its work. It revealed capacity. It showed contrast. It clarified what depth feels like, and then it ended. That doesn't make it a failure. It makes it formative. The mistake many men make is trying to extract meaning from her behavior instead of from their own growth. When you do that, you place your sense of value in someone else's ability to process truth. The strongest men don't need to be held in memory to move forward with confidence. They know that what they bring into a connection leaves an imprint, whether it's acknowledged or not. So if she acts like you meant nothing, let that be her way of coping, not your verdict. Your task is simpler and harder. Continue becoming the man who creates emotional clarity, not emotional confusion. Continue embodying presence, steadiness, and self-respect. Those qualities don't disappear when a relationship ends. They compound. And one day, whether with her or with someone else, you'll notice something unmistakable. You're no longer asking if you mattered. You'll know. And that quiet certainty, that grounded self-trust, is the real reason you were never as easy to let go of as she pretended you were.